welcome back to another edition of the SBK Betting Podcast, Thursday the 15th of February. So very happy Valentine's Day to you and whoever you have celebrated it with. I'm sure the two men on the podcast have wined and dined their loved ones after quite a solid weekend of punting for the podcast. TC Edwardstone was back to his best last week, which I'm sure put a big smile to your face. Those front-running tactics really saw a new lease of life, I thought, in him, even though it was a weak enough contest, but you put him up at 2-1. And I think plenty of podcast listeners must have followed you as we know he went off the world backed 11-10 favourites. That was great. But Ross, it's you who I want to turn to. You found the winner of the hottest handicap in Europe, as the spots like to call it, giving Nicky Henderson his 6th victory in the race. Iberico Lord won the Betfair hurdle. You tipped him at 11-2. He was really quietly smuggled into the race by Nico de Boinville, who was probably fresh, full of confidence from that victory on Shishkin. So pleasing day for you. And I suppose you probably got a lot of joy seeing an old friend in Shishkin winning in the way he did. So it must have been plenty of chocolates and roses for your loved ones yesterday.
Yeah, it was a good weekend, Jess. Having had, the nap was Hastings. That started the day off put me in a bit of a bad mood, I have to say. Kintara then finished second, and I just had flashbacks to the Saturday before, and I thought it could just be a day where we rattled the crossbar. But Nico de Boinville has his critics. I don't understand why you would criticise him. I think he's a very, very fine rider, and he's very patient. Gave this horse a beautiful ride, very reminiscent of the ride he gave him at Greatwood. Picked it up, and as soon as he was creeping into contention and Harry Skelton had committed early, you always felt that Iberico Lord was going to get there. And I think he is a horse, for all that he's had a bit of a hike in the weights, he might well still be dangerous going into the spring if they perhaps look to go up and trip with him. And yet, lots of chocolates and flowers. And it was actually my wedding anniversary yesterday, and I got taken out to the races at Poe. So yeah, it's been a good week so far.
Oh, brilliant. We love to hear that. What a romantic you are, getting married on Valentine's Day.
It means I only have to book a table once, doesn't it, Jess? Anniversary and Valentine's all into one. There's
method in that. Well done. And you don't ever forget it either. But yeah, Nico de Boinville was in fine form, and I suppose that they'll hope that it continue on. It's probably a lesser weekend for the Nicky Henderson team as we sort of edge close to the Cheltenham Festival. There will be more Cheltenham Festival clues this weekend. We've got Ascot, we've got Haydock with very heavy ground. We've got Wincanton as well. We might see a Gold Cup contender throw more weight behind his Gold Cup credentials, and Lompresse running at Ascot. But I suppose looking through the race cards and what's on, we've got a load of old favourites. We've also got Goshen, and I suppose we talked about great jockeys, and we've just had the news coming in that Jamie Moore, who's partnered Goshen to success and not so much success, but also has had some fantastic days in the saddles with the likes of Sada Gruji, who would probably be my favourite of all, but he's literally just announced his retirement. A jockey who's been completely riddled with issues and injuries over the last couple of seasons. It's just been one knock after the other for him, but an excellent jockey. And I think a man that we've all really enjoyed following on this podcast, but probably as long as he's been race riding. And Ross, we talk about good jockeys and exceptional people as well. And I think Jamie can leave and hang up his boots with his head held high, but must have been a frustrating way to bow out.
Yeah, he's been really unfortunate because he's virtually the perfect size for a jockey. He's short and squat and strong, but it just seems to have been so unfortunate with injuries, as was brother Josh. So I'm sure their mother is absolutely delighted today that she's got her two boys safe and sound at home and no longer risking life and limb. I suspect he's frustrated to have it end on not his own terms. He was on 968 winners. I'm sure 1,000 was sort of a milestone he'd like to have got to, but it shouldn't take away from a great career. And he's not a family I know, but certainly a family I enjoy listening to. There is a brilliant piece he did for British Racing with Sada Gruji at home. Now, lots of jockeys like horses that win. Jamie Moore just loves this horse. It's a brilliant thing to watch. It made me quite emotional. So clearly a very, very fine man and a very good rider to boot.
Yeah, completely great, great words and well said. A fabulous racing family. They'll only have one jockey to follow now, and unless there's the next generation coming through, and not too bad to follow and cheer on Ryan Moore from the sidelines, which I'm sure we'll be doing when we focus on the flat more heavily in due course. But bowing out on not on his own terms, but with so much to be proud of, is Jamie Moore today. But yeah, so they'll be hoping that Goshen maybe can redeem himself this weekend amongst others, because Gary Moore's got quite a few runners this weekend and he's had a great season indeed. And he has a runner in the Grand National Trial, which we'll be looking at first at 3:15 at Haydock. Now it's heavy there. There is rain around today, recording on Thursday and Friday. I don't know what would take for this meeting to be called off, but Haydock is a track that does get very, very testing indeed. So it's going to be a real marathon, 3 mile, 4.5 furlong for what is, as we know, a Grand National Trial. Ironic though that I pulled out 6 horses that actually don't have a Grand National entry of the 11. So they're not all necessarily going to be running primed into a Grand National itself. But we do have a lineup that includes Ironbridge, who's the top of the betting at 9-2, Famous Bridge at 6-1, so both for the Hemmings team. The Classic Chase winner, My Silver Lining, is 6-1. Snipe is 6-1 as his credo. I Will Do It 7-1, Yeah Man 8-1, and bigger prices for the rest. So Tom, a marathon trip in the mud. That's what you love. You love staying handicap chases. I'm sure that this is one of those races that really whets the appetite. Or is there something in there that you think, this could be quite a good contest this time around?
Yeah, for anyone that hasn't watched this podcast before, I prefer 6 furlong sprint. So this definitely is not in my realm. I think the going stick reading currently at Haydock is 3.5 on the chase track. And as you say, there's further rain anticipated. So it's going to be a proper slog. There won't be many finishers. If you are betting at Haydock this Saturday, then make sure you're following horses with proven soft ground form, or at least with an unknown factor where you believe they can handle the conditions, because it's going to play a huge part in the results. Generally in a race like this, and the next race that we're going to cover, the Swinley Chase, you want a horse at a decent price, because these wide open handicap kind of contests between older staying chasers, if you ran this race 10 times, you'd probably get 6 or 7 different winners. It's very wide open. The handicapper knows exactly where they stand with all of these horses. That's the general rule of thumb. However, I think in this Grand National Trial, there really is an anomaly, and that anomaly is Ironbridge. I think he's the clear standout in here. And the 9-2 you said is currently available. I think it's a very good price. I think it should be 3-1, 11-4. And actually, I think that's the SP for this horse. I think he'll go off around that price. I know he currently has an entry at Ascot as well, for which he was shortened this morning, but I'm 95% sure he's going to go to the Grand National Trial. I had an interview with John Joe O'Neill Jr. Earlier this week, Wednesday, in fact, and he said that Haydock was the plan. So unless Haydock gets called off, he's going to be going there. So you can scrap that engagement at Ascot. Just to talk about the horse, he's an 8-year-old. He's got far fewer miles on the clock than virtually every horse in this race. And he comes into the race on the back of a very good second in the Welsh National. Now, I know he was beaten a long way by Nassalam, but that horse just put in a monster display and basically freaked out that day. It was a real blip in Nassalam's career progression. And that's not to say it was a fluke, but the margin, I think, was a little bit flattering for the winner. Ironbridge finished tired. There is that to consider, but he's coming off a little bit of a freshening. I think he's going to be ready to go. And this is only his 3rd run of the season. He's been meticulously planned throughout the course of this year because they are aiming to the Grand National. I don't know if he has a national entry, but I think he's going to get one if not. And also, he needs to win this race to get into the national. He's rated 140. He won't get in otherwise. So the plan will be to come here, win this race, go to Aintree, I'm sure. These conditions, he wants it. He's very unexposed over the trip. He's had just one start in excess of 3 miles, aside from a walkover, which doesn't count. And that was in the Welsh National when he was second. So there's a huge room for improvement there for him. He's a good jumper as well. And his team, John Joe O'Neill, is flying. So where's the negative with Ironbridge? The price is good. I can't see it.
Yeah, you're right. He's horse 50 at the moment. And as we know, the number of runners in the national is lessened, so he does need to go up considerably in the handicap if he was to win this. But as you say, Ironbridge has got the entry, and with the Hemming Silk so well associated with the Grand National, you think that this is it. And Famous Bridge being in there as well, they're happy to take each other on, the ownership. And yeah, he for everything you've said, and with a nice racing weight as well of 11.5. John Joe O'Neill Jr. probably had the option of getting on some nice horses at Ascot as well for his dad, but he's stuck to his guns here. So I think what he's done coming into this, and I do I have to say, that freshening up, because this is going to be hard work. And Ross, we see horses in this race that have probably come into this not as fresh. A lot of them were in that classic chase with My Silver Lining. That would have been a pretty hard race, and essentially the ground has been like this for the last couple of months. No horse really will be as fresh as Iron Bridge coming into it.
No, I mean, I think TC did well to get it down to 6 or 7. I opened this up and really thank George for pulling this one up as a race to look at, because I think it's really, really competitive and pretty hard to pick through. The first thing I want to say is Famous Bridge is definitely better than his run in the Great Yorkshire last time. The ground was just too quick. It messed up his jumping. He's by fame and glory, and they're not the most naturally scopy jumpers of a fence. When the ground is soft, he's able to pop away a little bit more at a slower pace, and it suits him well. I think you see a better performance here. But if you like him, you've got to look at Credo, who's £8 better off when they met a couple of runs ago at Haydock for a 1-length beating. It looked like Famous Bridge had improved past him again and beat him further last time. But he is £5 better off for finishing third last time, beaten about 6 lengths. So he should get closer. And I think this step-up trip will suit him. I see the angle on Iron Bridge. And given that he was one of the very few to finish in the Welsh National, it's maybe odd that I just have this slight concern over whether he truly stayed. I mean, he finished very, very tired, but he was obviously less tired than everything else that pulled up. But there was just something about it that didn't quite sit with me watching it back. Last year, Iron Bridge was a horse I was very excited to see over staying trips this year. So I might well have got that wrong not to give him a second chance. So I came down on 2. The first is Snipe, who I think has been winning at trips that are going to prove to be short of his best. He clearly likes testing ground, as he showed when he won at Aintree over 3 miles on Boxing Day. If you remember on that occasion, he had entries at Aintree and at Sedgefield over this trip of 3 mile 4. Dan Skelton and his team of assistant trainers are very good at keeping horses at their minimum trip until they feel the handicap markers has caught up. And I think the fact they went to Aintree and were able to win over 3 miles suggests they felt there was still more to come. I'm sure this horse is going to improve for a step up in trip. Tristan Dowell takes £3 off. He's been a rider that I've been a little bit cool on, particularly over fences, but I had to concede that I needed to revise that when he rode Phlegmatic at Ascot about a month ago. He was very, very good on that horse. Looks like he's improving, as young riders are entitled to do. So for £3, takes Snipe's racing weight down to a nice rate. He's around about 6 to 1. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes off. If TC thinks Iron Bridge are well favourite, I wouldn't be surprised if Snipe was pretty close to him in the market. And then just one that I ummed and ahed whether to throw in, but I just, for some reason, can't shake him, is fullback for Gary Moore. He was off a very long time, I think about 400 days before falling quite early on at Lingfield last time, which wouldn't have been ideal. That was in the Fleur de Lis. That was clearly a run for something coming later to get him a bit fitter. But he's now £2 below his last winning mark, which came at Cheltenham, over 3 mile 2 on soft ground. From there, he went to the Portman Cup, which run at Taunton over 3 mile 4. Finished second behind Jarle Enki. Was comfortably second best, but the ground was pretty lively there. And Jarle Enki was a really good horse around Taunton in that race. I think he won the Portman Cup certainly twice, might even have been 3 times. And crucially for fullback, all of his 4 wins in his career have come on soft ground. Good to soft ground or good ground just doesn't seem to his best effect. He's around about a 20 to 1 shot. I certainly want to have him on side at an each way price, albeit he might just lack for a bit of race fitness, having departed early last time.
Yeah, okay. Well, he's the outsider of them all at present. So 20 to 1 you can get for a race which, as both TC and Ross have said, is a good renewal of it. It's Grand National trial, of course, but it's just a very decent staying handicap chase with horses. I just get your thoughts on this, Ross. I know we look at the Grand National, we've got half a field Irish runners, but we do have good quality staying chases around. It's just that for whatever reason, there's more Nassalams of such in Ireland. Obviously, we don't have Nassalam in here, but he's the top rated going into the Grand National. But there's a heftier amount of this type of a horse in Ireland, but it kind of reminds me, gives me a little bit more confidence of the level of horses that we do have at this grade.
Yeah, we'll get onto it come Cheltenham, but I'm not certain that, like everyone is saying, that the gap is widening between the UK and Ireland. I just am not convinced by it. I think the Irish definitely have an advantage because the Irish point-to-point scene is seen as being superior to the UK point-to-point scene, and the stats would probably bear that out. So, of course, if you're a trainer in Ireland, you do have home advantage in hearing the word on the grapevine for the point-to-pointer before it's run. So the best horses stay in Ireland, and point-to-point horses tend to be bred from stout national hunt stock. They tend to be stayers. So I think you do see that the pool mushrooms towards the 3 milers in Ireland versus the UK. But don't let anyone tell you that the Irish are better trainers. They just seem to have better material to work with at the moment. But everything is cyclical. It will come back. And I think there are some decent handicap staying chasers in the UK for certain.
Yeah, and you just got to credit the likes of the Hemmings family who bought both Ironbridge and Famous Bridge as stores. My Silver Lining is a homebred. I Will Do It is a homebred. Horses that have been nurtured or raised essentially from the ground up here. So, you just need to have your patience with it and sort of think outside the box a little bit. But that's, we could go into that story going on a while, but as we said, the overarching feeling is that this is a good race, and we've got some good horses at this level. Albeit Gavin Cromwell's taken one over to try and show us how good his horse is in comparison to ours. But for me, I'm sticking with an old favourite with I Will Do It. I love this horse. I've got no qualms of saying how much I do. He is an 11-year-old now. He is top rated with 149, but he has Dylan Johnson back on, who is riding out of his skin over the last couple of months. He gave this horse a good ride when he was third in the Welsh National. He was a £7 claimer now. Then he was a £5 claimer now. He had a treble at Leicester earlier this month, and I've just been really impressed with how well he's done filling the shoes of Sean Bowen when he was out, as he rides regularly for Ollie Murphy, who he's been based with since he's been over here. But look, I Will Do It. Still had plenty of weight for this race, despite £5 off. But he will love the ground. He will absolutely love every inch of that mud that they will face. Sam Thomas says that the more of that, the better. Now, this might just be his national. He's not entered in it. I don't know how many races he might find with this kind of ground. So potentially this is what they want to sort of, see him. They might have him perfectly cherry ripe for this, whereas some horses might be having longer term targets from the springtime. So I think I Will Do It, a horse of his quality at this stage. He might not be doing a huge amount more racing next season. I don't know. So I think that this might be really where we're hoping to see him at his best. So I Will Do It for me. And then I couldn't leave off My Silver Lining. I don't think anyone would begrudge the story to not continue, really. James Best, Emma Lavelle and Celia Jovanovic, who is James Best's mother-in-law. But, putting all the romanticism aside, this is a mare who's been nothing short of faultless this season. She's been in the placings all year. She was a fantastic winner of the Classic Chase. She's been given a £5 rise, which is fair without being excessive. I think Gala de la in behind is a fair yardstick. I think it was a very good renewal of it, and plenty of the horses that are in this Grand National Trial were behind her last time. She just will have to see how she'll cope with very testing going conditions, because she's only really been seen at the worst on soft. But I think considering she's a mare on the rise, I like to see that My Silver Lining continue on. So 2 former Classic Chase winners for me in the Grand National Trial Saturday at Haydock. Let's hope it's on, as we said, as we know that Ironbridge is doubly entered because Ascot will be on. Ascot has got good to soft ground as it stands, and that's where we're going to go on to next, the Swinley Handicap Chase, as Ironbridge is in this. It's a second preference just in case there's any issues at Haydock, but it's a shorter trip, got 3 miles, got Threeunderthrufive in here, sort of an old favourite now, always pitches up in these races, but finds it a bit difficult to win. Harry Cobden, Paul Nicholls teaming up. Victtorino back to the scene of where he was a winner twice last year for Charlie Deutsch and Vintage Williams. Ironbridge, as I said, unlikely he goes here. Shan Blue, Revels Hill, Do Your Job, a new trainer now, was with Lucinda Russell, now with Charlie Longston. So very much a similar sort of offering, TC, in terms of races. We've got slightly shorter, slightly better ground, but similar kind of ilk of horses in quite a competitive race.
Yes. Again, I would preface this by saying you generally want to find a price, etc., because it's a similar kind of race. However, unlike the national trial, I have no strong opinion here. I think it's key to put that up because any watcher could see tip, tip, tip and expect them all to be the same confidence. They're not. I really like Ironbridge. I don't really like anything in this race. However, for the podcast purposes, I'll put up Shan Blue as my selection. He was an exceptional novice chaser back in 2020 and 2021. He proved himself at the top level when he won the Quarto Star at Kempton on Boxing Day in 2020, I believe. It just hasn't happened for him in the last 2 years. Hasn't had many runs, encountered some issues. He's probably not the same horse that he was, but the handicapper has relented and he's dropped right down the weights as a result. There were signs last time, I thought, in first-time cheek pieces that he retains at least some of the ability, that the fire still burns a little bit in his stomach, and that he could easily bounce back and become a winner again. So I'm going to take the basis that he's now stepping up in trip to the trip that he wants, off a nice mark. This Shan Blue is probably the play at around 7, 8 to 1, whatever price he is at the time of recording. But I won't be having a bet in the race, Jess.
Okay, yeah, he had those first-time cheap pieces last time. Definitely seemed to have benefited him because there was running like something was severely wrong with him the last 2 times, and it just they've had to work out something because clearly a very talented horse. So Shan Blue is a bit of a joker in the pack here. We can give you 11-2. Wouldn't want anything shorter than that, I'd imagine, for that horse, TC.
No, I mean, even that wouldn't exactly tempt me in. You know, that's probably why I'm not having a bet in the race. If he was 10 to 1, I would be having a bet on him. But I still think it's a fair price given what he's achieved in the past. And this race, it's not that deep. I know you can make a case for plenty, but if Shan Blue retains anything like his ability when he won the Quarto Star, he will win off this weight. So he has to be the play at a reasonable price for me.
Okay, TC, not with a huge feeling towards one or the other, but we'll give you Shan Blue. So slightly not overly enamoured with the race in terms of a selection. Ross, do you have a confident selection here? Is it a race that you're getting excited for?
No, TC summed it up beautifully when you went to him and you went, yes, and sort of drew it out. You know, that sums it up beautifully. It's a muddle of a race, isn't it? I mean, Victorino seems to have captured everyone's imagination, and I'm not quite sure. I don't think he seems to have a huge amount in hand on his mark. He was comfortably beaten last time. I know that was back in trip, and 3 miles will see him better, but I think the ground's going to ride good enough at Ascot. I didn't see much rain in their forecast, and they're good to soft now, so I think it'll be decent ground. I'm not sure that's going to suit him. 3-under-through-5, came there swinging in the Badger beers. I'm not sure if anyone on the podcast put him up, but he certainly should have won and didn't go through with it. I know you did, TC. That's why I mentioned it. He just doesn't like to get his head in front, does he? He could well run a big race and finish second, beaten half a length. Shan Blue, I see TC's angle, but he's very hard to trust. Other cheap pieces can do the same thing again. Revels Hill, I think, wants softer ground. Do Your Job is interesting if he stays, but he struggles with his breathing, not so sure. Larry loves the ground and the track, but he's a bit of a in and out sort of horse. So the one I came down on has got a question to answer, but it's Torn and Frayed. He's a decent price. He'll love this ground. He's just a pound above his last winning mark, which came at Cheltenham over 2 mile 4, and he stayed very strongly there. So I'm hopeful, not confident, but hopeful he'll stay this trip. He does need to find a rhythm early because his jumping can be, he can either jump beautifully or he can jump very moderately. If he gets into a rhythm early with Sam Twiston-Davies, I think he's got a good chance. Like I say, it's the ground angle and the fact that he's just a pound above a winning mark might find a bit of improvement for going up in this trip against a field of horses that I have problems with all of them.
Okay, yeah, look, a process of elimination, it seems, and I wasn't too dissimilar to you. You've actually mentioned one of mine, Revels Hill, that you think will just want softer ground, and that would be my sticking point. But I think, as we've as both you and TC have said, they've all got their limitations. Revels Hill is we've all said it, at a price for me. And he is, as I see it, 8-1. Torn and Frayed, by what it's worth, is the biggest price of all of our selections at 16-1. So I suppose you're not going to do yourself any disfavours by having a little saver on that. But Revels Hill's 8-1. Now, this is a horse that was progressive last year. I read that he had a setback from the Noel Feely Racing Syndicate's website. He's been on the walker for 3 months, so I wouldn't have thought it was anything too serious, but it was enough to keep him off. So he starts the season really fresh, 294 days off. Last seen finishing third behind Kitty's Light in that Bet365 Gold Cup at Sandown, but was really he just was a solid horse last year. He was third in this. I think he needs a trip. I think he could be a Grand National horse, which he's entered in. But they want to start him here to give him essentially a good pipe opener and a track that they know he's run well at. And I think, as I said, he probably will be the one staying on. So I'd like to hope that there's a solid enough test on, it's not soft enough ground for me to be massively confident, but 300-5, I really failed to find a lot of horses liking to go on in here, but it could be 300-5, who Harry Cobden might just take the bull by the horns and try and see if he can win it out in front. But as we know, he likes to throw things away a little bit, so that will do no harm for Revels Hill. So that's my selection, and what we know is pretty sort of windy enough suggestions from us, but I'm sure we'll find something in our Napa next best. But thanks for TC and Ross. We've got Shamblu, Revels Hill, and Torn and Frayed. So we'll go into the next Naps and next best. There's a lot of racing on this weekend for maybe not a vintage day in terms of what we can see. But having said that, there is the Ascot Chase. There is the return of L'Empresse. Interesting that they decided to come here after the Fleur de Lis. What they need to prove, I'm not too sure, but essentially they obviously think that he needs a bit more running to get him into the Gold Cup in pitch perfect form. We've got Wincanton, they host the Kingwell Hurdle. Haydock also has the Rendlesham, which is sort of a bit of a Stayers Hurdle trial. And we've got racing throughout on the all-weather as well. So, TC, over to you first. Your Edwardstone was, I think, your nap last week, if I'm not too mistaken. Yeah, nap one. So what's your winning nap for us this week?
Well, I'm sure now that you've listed 2 all-weather tracks that are racing on Saturday, people are expecting an all-weather tip. That's not the case. People are now expecting Ascot. But no, in a rare turn of events, Jess, I'm going to Goran Park. And this is because everyone in the comments always says, no tip from Ireland this week. Well, here you go. Here's the tip from Ireland. The Art in the 252 at Goran Park. He's my nap of the week. I don't expect him to be too much of a price. Obviously, there's no market formed at the time of recording at 1 p.m. on Thursday, but I anticipate he'll be favourite. Maybe something around 7-4 would be quite nice, but this is a horse that's going to get punted before the off, maybe as soon as the market goes live. So keep an eye out in the 252 at Goran if you do want to follow me in here on The Art. Tom Cooper's charge ran in 2 bumpers, one first time up, under Patrick Mullins very impressively. Then went to Cheltenham for the champion bumper, finished 18th, just wasn't capable of performing with the best bumper horses last year. Came back over hurdles, shaped really nicely on the comeback actually, when I think it was a Nace and he finished second that day. And then readily got off the mark at Cork last month in emphatic style, beating another of Willie Mullins' runners that day, who hasn't gone on to win but has placed since behind a horse called Bioluminescence, who's quite talented. Last time out, The Art was well punted in the market, made a terrible mistake, like a bone-shuddering mistake when travelling really well, and somehow managed to, after losing all of his momentum and dropping back to 4th or 5th, regain the stride and get up for second behind a runaway winner who was very good and is now rated in the 130s. He now steps up in trip, which definitely helps. I'm sure he has the talent to be a 135, 140 horse in time, and he's running off 121. So on that basis, The Art in the 252 at Goran has to be a good selection if he jumps well, which fingers crossed he will. The next best is in England, and it's a Haydock in the 350, a horse called Cuthbert Dibble. Nigel Twiston-Davis's run has quickly developed into a nice type. He had a fair few runs last year, should have ended the season, in my opinion, with 3 back-to-back successes. Now, he won 2 of them, Leicester and then at Foss-Lass. But in the middle, sandwiched in between them, was an EBF final 5th behind Crambo. To suggest that he should have beaten Crambo, who has now obviously developed into a leading Stayers Hurdle contender, is maybe a bit foolish on my behalf. But I think he's shaped very well in the race. And actually, if he was ridden closer to the speed, he might have beaten Crambo that day, despite being 10 or so lengths behind. He returned to the track with a decisive victory at Chepstow just a few weeks ago. It was a very impressive run, barely came off the bridle and stretched clear on heavy ground. So he should handle the conditions at Haydock. I know he's top weight, 12 stone, but Finn Lambert's riding, taking off the £5. And again, I think he's a very well handicapped horse, running off the mark of 133 with the potential to improve a great deal up to 140 plus. So Cuthbert Dibble in the 350 at Haydock is my next best.
Yeah, I've followed those through, Tom. I will be, because DR, one of the 20, I think it was, subsequent winners of the Champion Bumper. The only horse that hasn't come out and won is the winner itself, A Dream to Share, ironically. But that was that's an interesting case, and we love our Irish racing. Don't forget that. We will be focusing on plenty of it, especially when we come to the Cheltenham Festival, as we have to. And Cuthbert Dibble, yeah, I think I might have even put him up for that EBF final at Sandown last year, and I was pulling my hair out watching Sam Twiston-Davies smuggle them at the back and had so much work to do. And I think he'd have his time again, as you say. He wouldn't have let him have so much, let the field have so much rope out in front. But I think they're plotting something, as they haven't had him out a huge amount, have they, this season? So interesting to see how he gets on. So Cuthbert Dibble and Diart for TC. Naps the next best for you, Ross. What have you got for us?
Well, first of all, I just throw a third bit of weight behind Cuthbert Dibble. I think TC's spot on. He is well handicapped. And I know that if you ask Sam Twiston-Davies if he could have one ride from last season back, it would be that ride in the EBF final. So I think there's definitely weight to TC's argument there. I came very close to putting Pic D'Orhy up against Lompresse. Lompresse going right-handed at Ascot on quicker ground over a shorter trip. I just am not convinced that that's the best way to go with him. But I have resisted, and I've gone to Haydock for my nap, which is Botox Has. This horse likes soft, heavy ground and a flat track, like Weatherby, like Haydock. He gets that here. This is going to suit him really, really well. I think the ground at Cheltenham last time was far too lively for him. Sounds Russian is the only danger I can see on the ratings, but he is, I think, coming back. Well, I don't think he's definitely coming back off a long layoff. I think this is a sighter for something into the spring, probably over fences. I think round about 9-4 looks like a really good price for Botox Has. Caelan Quinn gets on great with him, so that's in the 240 at Haydock. And then the next best is Rare Edition for Charlie Longston. Harry Cobden retaining the ride. Been dying to see him over this trip. He was perhaps a bit buzzy early on in his novice career, which is why they kept him at 2 miles. He won over 2 mile last time. I think you can upgrade that performance because he landed on his hind legs with a pretty bad mistake 2 out. Lost a lot of momentum, got back rolling and got up to beat Arcube going away at the line. He's up just £3 for that. He was 136. He's now 139. I think this step up in trip, Harry Cobden retaining the ride. I always feel like he's a rider that when he gets to know horses, he finds improvement in them. I think Rare Edition is a good-looking horse in the 225 at Ascot.
Okay, yes, and sounds Russian for what it's worth. I had listened to an interview with Ruth Jefferson talking about how that when he was brought down in the Gold Cup, he had an injury to his knee. He had to get some chips taken out, some issue with ligaments. It didn't sound very nice at all. And the recommendation by the vet was to go hurdling first, see how that would go before opting to go chasing, because obviously he's rated 160 over fences, so he's £10 better off, although we're in a grade 2, but a seriously good horse. So let's hope that Sounds Russian can get back into his groove in the Rendlesham. Interesting race that, but yeah, Botox Has the case that you made about the ground and Cheltenham is similar to where I'm going with my nap, which comes also at Haydock. Isaac de Zerbo for Paul Nicholls. Bryony Frost is on board, obviously. Harry Cobden elsewhere, but Bryony, it's a good opportunity here for Bryony, and Isaac de Zobo, a horse that was third to Gidley Park, a horse that TC and Ross know very, very well, a friend of this podcast, and clearly a very useful sort indeed, who won at Cheltenham. And I don't think Isaac de Zobo, I don't think he disappointed at all that day, being beaten 6 lengths by a horse of that nature on ground that would have been good enough for him. He was a winner at Chepstow on heavy ground. He's a big chaser in the making, really. He's related to the Clanders of Bow and the likes, and I think that whatever he does now, obviously a bonus, as we like to say, but he's a horse that will definitely have his preferred ground. It's a weaker race than it was at Cheltenham, and I think that he has an excellent chance in that 4:25 with a 3 mile half a furlong, which should be his absolute optimum. And then my next best, I've gone to Wincanton for another Paul Nicholls runner. This is Rubo. Lorcan Williams is on board and in the Kingwell Hurdle. Not a deeply inspiring race. We obviously got Goshen in there for the Moors, and it just goes to prove that the limitations of our champion hurdle division minus Constitution Hill. But Rubo loves it around Wincanton. He was a winner here at the beginning of the season on similar ground. He had to chase home and see the backside of Constitution Hill last time. Didn't do him. There's nothing wrong with him coming behind Lossiemouth, 11 lengths behind Lossiemouth at Cheltenham on a track that's probably a little bit too stiff for him at the tail end of the race. So Rubo, I think, will get back to winning ways at Wincanton in the Kingwell Hurdle on Saturday. So that's it. Nap's next best for a lot to look forward to. Very interested what Ross has said about potentially taking Long Presse on with Pic D'Orhy. So we'll be back next week to review all of that and more. A reminder that all new SBK users get £30 in free bets when you sign up and bet £10 for the first time. Head to SBK for lots of other offers. One of them this weekend is that you can double your winnings on any horse in any race on Saturday. So that's for new and existing customers. You opt in and get 100% winnings boost on any horse in any race. We've given you plenty of food for thought, so there should be no excuses at all. So hopefully we'll be back next week to celebrate some winners. Make sure to visit the SBK app to opt in, and obviously T's and C's apply. So without further ado, thank you to Ross, thank you to TC, and we'll see you next week.